Lisa, we good? Oh, yeah, quiet. We're in church.
Okay, we're ready to go. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to MetroPlan Orlando TSMO meeting. I'll call this meeting to order. My name is Brian Sanders, and I'll be chairing the meeting today. This meeting is in person. It is important for all TSMO members to attend our meetings in person. So all committee members are asked to be present at the MetroPlan Orlando boardroom for us to have a quorum. Members of the public are still able to participate virtually, and we encourage them to do so. There are 2 public comment points in the meeting. Members of the public attending in person who want to speak need to fill out a comment card and give it to, well, Lisa today. And those attending on Zoom who want to speak can use the raise hand feature on the Zoom screen. We also accept comments by email and phone messages before the meeting. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Eric Hill, MetroPlan Orlando, for agenda review.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members in the room and online. We have a few changes, or not changes, but we do have alternates with us this morning. Cameron Crandall is attending for Noel Carsa. Okay, he's here. Martin Butcher is for Kelly Brock, Casberry. Nick Hartley for Steve Kane. Michael Rumar for Steve Krug. Yeah. And then Nubel Muhaisa for Maria Chahara from the city of Orlando. Next item is the TIP resolution that has a minor change in your agenda that is unrelated to the project funding. The updated TIP resolution is included in the digital agenda packets in front of you, and you can find the hard copies printed at the back of the room. It's been a while since we have had an orientation for this committee. There have been a lot of changes in staffing. And so since we do not meet next month, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to use our normal 4th Friday morning as an opportunity for us to do a orientation for TSMO members. I'll follow with some invitation and see who is interested. It'll be virtual. Shouldn't take any longer than an hour. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Mike Wilson for our safety moment.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, everyone. Our safety moment this time is March is Florida Bicycle Month. Florida does, we do things differently here. The rest of the country, it's in May, but we like to get a little earlier start when it's still cool out for Bicycle Month. So kind of overview on bicycle crashes for our past 5 years that we're using for the Vision Zero. An average of 728 reported crashes per year. This for 2023, which is not complete yet in Signal 4, we are up considerably at 824, and probably have another 10 or 15 before the year's out. An average of about 67 serious injury crashes per year. What's notable is that we also have data from the Florida Injury Tracking System that shows that there are 115 bicyclist hospital admissions, so are serious enough to be admitted to the hospital per year, that do not involve a motor vehicle. So, there's something going on there, a variety of things having to do with crashes with other bicyclists, surface hazards, et cetera. And then we have an average of about 14 fatal crashes per year. And again, we are way up, unfortunately, for 2023 with 21. And there are also some fatal crashes that don't involve a motor vehicle, typically a head injury without a helmet. So looking into the crashes, what are the 2 key things that cyclists can do to improve their safety? Well, one is to go with the flow. Going against the flow of traffic, whether you're on the sidewalk, bike lane, travel lane, doesn't matter. is about 5 times riskier than going with the flow of traffic. And as you can see in this photograph here, here's the driver pulling out from a driveway, looking to the left where the lion's share of the traffic is coming from. And here's a cyclist coming up on their right. This is the most common crash that I see when I look at crash reports. Virtually every day, I see a crash like this. Now, they tend not to be really serious overall, but because there are so many of them, they still account for 30% of our KSI crashes. Not very many fatalities, but a fair amount of serious injuries. And compare that overtaking crashes only about 10% of our KSIs. So when we look at these fatal and serious crashes, there's still one of these crashes results in a serious injury every 13 days in our area. And then the other big issue is lighting, using lights at night. We know from our count data that about a quarter of bicyclist travel is at night, but 30% of our KSI crashes are nighttime, and over 50% of the overtaking KSI crashes are nighttime. And when we look at fatalities, over half are at night, and nearly 3/4 of the overtaking are at night. Your risk for a serious injury crash is 5 times greater at night than it is during the daytime. And look at this photograph here, and there's not a bicyclist in this photograph. I'm not trying to pull one off on you, but just look at all the light sources in here, and we don't even have any motor vehicle traffic. And think about it, even if you have a tail light, is it bright enough? So there's a lot of barely minimally visible lights out there, but it's worthwhile to invest in something a bit brighter to make sure that you're conspicuous. So that's my safety moment for this month. Be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
There are no questions.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mike. Mr. Chairman, I need to go back to my agenda review. And Lisa, can you go back to the Compton slide? Thank you. I missed this. Mr. Chairman, the Council of Minority Transportation Officials is a international organization that represents minorities in the transportation industry. I am a proud member of, I think, 40 years of being part of this organization. And every year they do an internship program. And they are recruiting sponsoring agencies now that would serve as a host for an intern. It's a great opportunity, not only for the agencies, but for the intern themselves, because it exposes them to transportation in various roles. I'm a proud father of a student who went through this program with the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority. And being a finance major, he was privy to bond openings, which I think really impressed him. But he also learned about what I do for a living, how I was paying for his tuition, what it was coming, where it was coming from. But there's information on the table in back, on the table in the back. And also, if you would just consider it, there is a cost because it is a paid internship. And the annual Compto meeting is attendant for the intern at the annual conference is a requirement. It's part of this internship. So again, information is in the back. And if you have any questions, let me know. But again, just consider it. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa to do the roll.
I'll ask all committee members to keep microphones off until called. Please say here or present. Barden.
Here.
Crandall for Barkessa.
Here.
Bates.
Here.
Butcher for Brock. Lopez for Carson. DeLoche.
Here.
Edie. El Hassar.
Reza.
Elliott Moore. Gordon.
Here.
Homiani. Horn. Hudson. Jameson.
Here.
Dredge. Hartley for Kane. Rumor for Krug. Lim,
Here.
Margraf,
Here.
Price,
Here.
Pulliam, Richmond, Sanders,
Here.
Sonorans,
Here.
Smith,
Present.
Muhison for Tahara,
Present.
Toussaint, Wetzel,
Here.
Martello for Williams, Yeager,
Present.
Yeargain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Lisa. At this time, we will hear public comments on our action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold your comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you will be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll send you a prompt to unmute your mic. Rachel, do we have anyone virtually that would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised on the virtual side.
Wonderful. Lisa, do we have any members of the public attending that wish to make a comment?
We have not received any.
Okay. Are there any written comments?
Mr. Chairman, we did not receive any.
Okay. Today we have 5 action items, members making 2. We have 2 action items. We'll scratch that. Members making or seconding a motion, please state your name. The first item is the approval of the January 26, 2024 TSMO meeting minutes. Our first item is approval of the 2026-2024 TSMO minutes, which are included in tab 1 of your packets. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Chad Smith, move to approve.
All right.
Second, I will start.
All right. We have a second. Are there any discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion pass. We don't need to go over any of all this.
No, that's already been covered.
Okay, very good. All right, the next item is support for the UPWP submittal to FDOT. Our next action item is the amendment to the Transportation Improvement Program. More information can be found in tab 2. Mr. Sartorio of MetroPlan will now tell us some more about that.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Jason Sartorio, and this morning I have one tip amendment for you. Additional information regarding this amendment is located in tab 2 of your agendas. This morning's tip amendment is for a resurfacing project along State Road 535 from US 192 to south of International Drive. And the amendment is to increase funding, construction funding for fiscal year 2024 due to scope changes and cost increases for materials. As I mentioned earlier, you have some additional information regarding this amendment located in tab 2 of your packets. With that being said, we are asking for your vote of approval of the amendment. Thank you.
Discussions back here. Do we have any questions for Mr. Sartorio? No, seeing none. Do we have a motion to recommend the tip amendments?
Motion to approve, Centerins.
Great, second.
Smith, second.
All right, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion pass. All right, thank you, Mr. Sartorio. Next, we have support for the UPWP submittal to FDOT. We have Alex Trogger. Will present this information. Please hold your questions. Mr. Trogger, you're recognized.
Morning, Mr. Chair, TSMO members. This is following up from a informational presentation I made to you last month. This month in your agenda packets, we have our draft UPWP for submittal, which I'll talk about a little bit more today. But again, in your agenda packets is a link to that document, which is on our website. As I presented last month, this is our annual operating budget, a document that we have to prepare by law every 2 years, which describes our work as staff, as well as identifying consultant services that will take place over the next few years to satisfy the federal requirements and to meet all the certification aspects that we have as an organization. We're at this second step. Last month, a little bit of info for y'all. This month, we are asking in our board at their March 13th meeting for their approval of this document. And then we'll be sending it off to DOT for their review, and then it will come back with those comments, final revenue estimates. So we'll be making some updates following this, and then we'll be coming back during your April-May cycle for final approval of the budget. As I presented last month, we have 10 core tasks. These haven't changed. In past years, we have streamlined the document, but we've landed on these 10 core tasks. Most are required tasks based on state guidance, but it really outlines the core works of our organization, as well as our pass-through funds that go to links through our task 200. I presented last month these proposed studies. So these are the likely consultant services, things that you're going to be hearing a lot more about as informational presentations, at TAC and TSMO meetings over the next few years, but we will be continuing these efforts. All of these are detailed in the Appendix H of the UPWP document. Numbers haven't changed. Our revenue estimates haven't changed going into from your presentation last. Important to note, our current year budget does have a significant additional federal funds as part of the Safe Streets grant that we have. So we do have that $5 million in current year. As we go into the next 2 years, those are more typical revenue estimates for our metropolitan planning area. So we're going to be kind of going back to typical funding levels, and our consultant services and level of work will be commensurate of that. But primarily federally funded, some state funds in there. You'll see the local matching funds. Another key part of our UPWP is the pass-through funds that we provide to links for their strategic planning work. $350,000 of our PL, our federal planning funds, go directly to links to support their planning activities. We also pass through federal transportation disadvantage funds, which helps links administer the Access Links paratransit service. And then per our board's policy, as part of the 2045 adopted long-range plan, $7 million a year of our area's urban attributable SU funds go directly to links to support their transit asset management for eligible capital expenses. That's been a long-standing policy, and those funds are passed through, not as part of our UPWP, but as we're talking revenues, we believe it's important to note at this level, $7.4 million of Metro Plan Orlando funds, about 5% of our budget is passed through directly to links to support their strategic planning. Again, we're at the action phase of the draft document, so we can submit this on to FDOT and Federal Highway. But we'll be coming back in later months for final approval. But with that, take any questions that you may have. Again, tab 3 of your agenda packet has a board action fact sheet as well as a hyperlink to the draft document, but we are asking for your approval today. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Alex? Okay. Seeing none, do we have a motion for resupport of this submittal?
Shad Smith, I move to approve this recommendation of approval for the draft UPWP to.
Very good. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, very good. Motion passes. Next, we have 2 presentations, and the first one up is Mr. Eric Hill for the update to the TSMO master plan.
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman and members. It's been a while since I've given you an update on this project. There's been some nuance in the work that we've completed, and I'll touch on that in the presentation. We started this project with the steering committee, and this is the list of members that serve on our committee. I have asterisks next to the authorities that projects are not included in this master plan because they have their own funding source, so outside of what we will be funding in our work. We've had 6 meetings, so since we started the project, we've had a meeting almost every quarter. Kimley Horn is the lead consultant, and Jim Wood is with me this morning. He serves pretty much as my 3 lifelines here, in case there are some questions that I can't answer. So I think this committee, and raise your hand if you're not sure what TSMO is or you don't have a concept of what TSMO is. But this is the definition that we're using. And we want to leverage technology, information communication technology to improve safety, reliability, and reduce fuel consumption on our transportation network. Now, the first few slides, I think this committee has been privy to. I'll try not to spend too much time and focus on the latter part of this presentation because that addresses some of the nuance that we've had. TSMO strategies, again, I imagine everyone here is familiar with the TSMO strategies that we typically try to deploy. I have at the bottom that low tech, high tech. That's my own suggestion because what I've learned, and I think many of you have learned, is that it's not always about technology. It can be just a simple agreement to advance some strategy. And you'll hear that in the strategies that we recommend in our master plan. Scope of work, task one was just developing vision, goals, objectives. And that relied on documentation that we collected from the steering committee and the other agencies in our region. We looked at existing conditions, we identified the needs, looked at strategies, and spoiler alert on the funding. The typical funding sources are still there, with the exception of federal dollars that have been made available. But in terms of the funding, we haven't really identified anything that's different than what you probably have already used and probably will use in the future. Again, the federal level is a little different because there's a lot of grant opportunities. The regional architecture is a document that the department maintains. It's a federal requirement for use of dollars for technology. It's one that's, it's just a technical document. And I'll just touch on that briefly in a slide. And then the prioritization matrix, how we are going to prioritize the projects and evaluate those as what we are completing now and moving into the next task. There are 10 tasks in this study, but these are the core tasks. The others are administration and just project delivery. Vision, again, we want to take advantage of all the multimodal opportunities in our region. And we want to leverage technology to advance every form of transportation. And that makes abundant sense when you think about our own society, the environment that we live in. Every aspect of our lives is being touched by some form of technology. So why not transportation? So we want to leverage that and see if we can improve, again, the safety, reliability. The goals are aligned with our last Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which will continue into the next update. And those we use, we developed criteria to evaluate those, and that goes into the project ranking. So the first one was looking at existing conditions, this gap analysis. We did interviews with all the stakeholders, and we've done a couple of interviews with them. We did the first interview, we developed some strategies, and then we went back to them to see if there was anything we were missing or something that they wanted to add. Current status of where they are, desired outcome, and then we identified those gaps. With those gaps, we were able to identify or move into the needs. The infrastructure and systems relies on that regional architecture, making sure that the data flows, the connections are all identified and maintained. Strategies and operations looks at how we can do more in terms of collaboration, how we can learn from each other and from around the country on how we can advance TSMO projects through the procurement process, through innovations. And then how we can do more from a business perspective, how we can look at how we are performing in the TSMO world. One of the things that I have always been intrigued by is being able to deploy a TSMO project and then going back in 3 to 5 years and doing an evaluation. When the project was developed, what were the goals? Did it meet the goals? I think in TSMO, there's been a challenge, and I've been asking this question from my peers from around the country. There's a challenge because usually TSMO projects are connected to something else. a capacity project, a transit project. So how do you identify and just tease out that TSMO component? Agency and organization is workforce and culture. I'm happy to always tell other MPOs that we have a culture here that supports TSMO. And one of the items that I always highlight is an ingredient in our secret sauce is champions. We do have champions, policy level, and then at the regional level as well. We wanted to make sure we got community buy-in and perspective from our community and our citizens. And so we did a field trip for our community advisory committee, and we took them to the Grand Regional Traffic Management Center. And for those that haven't been there, you missed the truth. But I'm sure that Jeremy Dillmore is certainly available to give you a tour. But we had a tour for them where Jeremy Dillmore was the tour guide, and he took them around and let them see what TMC, how that looks, how it operates. And as usual, they were wowed by this because it is impressive. And this is the behind the scenes that most citizens, most people in the public, they don't see. They're not aware of this. And so it was an opportunity for us to sit down and just get their perspective on what we should be looking at in terms of this master plan. And one of the things that highlighted that I heard, that I've heard nationally, and Adam Hoot, who's with the National Operations Centers of Excellence, gave us a presentation a couple months ago on a survey that they've done nationally. And it linked with what we were hearing. At least one of the things that I heard here was how we can use TSMO to address egress and access to events that occur here in our region. Central Florida is host to a number of events throughout the year. And how can we use TSMO to reduce the amount of congestion, create access, create alternatives to visit these venues? Strategies, we use the department's strategy guide. And this is a host of strategies that the department has compiled that we can use. And when we looked at these strategies for where we wanted to deploy them, we looked at what we tied them with the goals. We looked at the focus area. Is it a communications gap that we want to close? And then how do we do that? And what's involved with implementing that strategy? It's a great idea, but can it be deployed? And if it can, what do we need to be mindful of as we're doing this? The regional architecture, this is what it looks like pretty much for every strategy you can think of. And I grabbed this one as a multimodal integration framework because this is what it is. And again, the department maintains this. This is something that we have to use in terms of looking at strategies that we want to implement. But this is one of the things that the feds usually encourage us to do as we're developing strategies to make sure that it fits within the architecture. Prioritization criteria. Again, the goals are aligned with the MTP. You can see the criteria that we're using for safety, reliability, and performance, and then the data source, and then the points that we are applying to each of these items. Here's investment in economy, access and connectivity. I want to highlight the under investment in economy, the data source at Central Florida MPO TSMO rubric. There's a Central Florida MPO Alliance. And many years ago, the regional consortium, and many of you serve on the consortium, suggested that we include TSMO projects on the Alliance prioritized project list. And so we worked a couple years to get the Alliance to accept it, number one. We had to define what a regional project is. And then number three, how do we evaluate and rank these projects? Now, it was a pretty interesting process because when we grabbed all the regional projects, and this is the reason for the Alliance, when we looked at all the MPOs in the region, District 5, and we put all the TSMO projects on a list, Metro Plan Orlando just sucked the air out of the room. We had so many projects. And so what we did is we linked it to the TRIP program, for the department. And the key component there is that it's linked to the SIS. That's where you can identify some funding. And so when we did that, Metro Plan Orlando projects went away pretty much. But there's a couple. But we were able to identify projects for the other MPOs in the district. Just wanted to highlight that. And lastly, health and environment. The nuance. We started down this path. We were moving right along. And then I got a comment that, yeah, we do a lot in developing and looking at technology in this master plan. What about some of the things that are near and dear to folks, like intersection improvements? And so we had to pivot and start a sub process on intersection improvements. And so we've asked or the steering committee, we said we can do or look at least 20 first attempt at this. And so each of the jurisdictions came to us with intersections that they wanted to deploy some TSMO strategies on. And these will go through the same prioritization process that we have for the other projects. But it excludes volume to capacity regional projects and stop density. Now, some of you may recall or remember a gentleman by the name of Jerry McCullough. And Jerry was Seminole County traffic engineer. He was also one of the first chairs it was the ITS, now subcommittee, now TSMO. But I remember he said, we were going through something like this, and he said, don't put a list together. Don't put the list out there. He said, when you put a list out there in front of people, it's sacrosanct. And so with that in mind, while we are not showing you a list, we do have a list of projects for each of the jurisdictions. But we have one more steering committee meeting. And at that meeting is where we want to go and make sure that list is complete and to everyone's liking. So we do not meet next month, but in April, we'll be coming back to you with a complete list of projects that we want to close this master plan out with. Path forward, kind of already alluded to that. But we want to make sure we leverage existing investments. For example, got a lot of fiber out there in our quarters, and we want to make sure that everything related to technology is being invested in that quarter as much as possible. Only makes sense, as I said earlier. Our lives are touched by technology in every form. And if we can, and when you look at mobility, connected vehicles, soon to be autonomous vehicles. You look at the apps that are available and being used for other modes of transportation. If we have that baseline, that infrastructure in place in quarters, we can leverage that and we can be more efficient in the investments we're making so that we can make our transportation system more reliable and safe. Regional strategies, that goes back to that low technology, high technology. If we can look at regional strategies, agreements, collaboration, especially in terms of performance and how we evaluate that, that's what the master plan is encouraging. And then other considerations, we have the active transportation plan, the Vision Zero Central Florida effort, and those are also looking at corridor improvements. And that's where we would like to also invest quite a bit in our technology, but leverage that as well. And then the last one, artificial intelligence. I know yesterday at the consortium meeting, Eric Gordon mentioned that the Turnpike is developing policy on how to manage that. I believe that Doug mentioned to me a couple of weeks ago that Lynx is also looking at trying to develop some policy on how we deal with that, because how this is going to impact transportation, and I'm pretty uncertain at this point because I don't think many people know what will happen with it. But at least having that policy and framework in place will help guide what we end up doing with it. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation, and I am standing here ready to answer any questions and comments.
Very good presentation, Eric. Do we have any questions for Eric?
I just wanted to thank Eric for considering all of my comments. I have not been a pain, but finally, we have everything put together.
Okay, great.
Oh, Eric, just a quick clarification for the artificial intelligence policy. It's actually FDOT, and we're working with Central Office FDOT to refine. And I still need to provide them comments and input, but that's the plan. Yep.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, thank you, Eric. Next presentation is one that I've been very much looking forward to. It is an update on Attain Central Florida, and Mr. Jeremy Dillmore will give us that presentation. Jeremy.
Jeremy, we turn your mic on. Oh, I'm sorry. Right there. There you go.
It looks like it's off, but now it says it's on. Sorry. All right, cool. Technology, man, I don't know how to do anything with it. I gotta get working. Sorry about that, guys. So hi, I'm Jeremy Dillmore. I'm the TSMO program engineer for FDOT District 5, if we have not met before. So I'm gonna talk to you about the Attain program. I won't cover all aspects of it. I've given some updates in the past and some of the things that have been around a while. I will not actually be including. If you do have questions about them, please let me know. One of the things I won't talk a lot about is integrated corridor management, mostly because we've been living it for the past 5 years. And I think most of you see every day through our interactions exactly how that's working and what's going on with it. But I'll go ahead and hit some of the aspects that may not be as visible and provide some updates on where things are, as well as some lessons learned. So I'll actually focus a little bit more on the negative than the positive in this to go ahead, because I think that really helps us to grow and continue to move forward as a group. But with that, one of the first things is we have, of course, to start out with an acronym, because otherwise it wouldn't be a presentation that I was giving. If you're not familiar with what SPAT stands for, that's signal phasing and timing. This was a very small pilot. It was our first real step into connected vehicle. And what it was looking at was the ability to share traffic signal information with roadside, with actual vehicles, with actually being able to put it out to what's called an onboard unit. So this was about letting it know what the signal status was and to let them know when things were changing. So this has been fully implemented. Since then, we've been able to go ahead and build on that with connected vehicle. What you actually see in the picture there is Kyle in our office, and you see that there's a bunch of different connected vehicle units. As part of this work, Charlie was good enough to host us down at Seminole County's facility. We were able to test out a bunch of different controllers and a bunch of different connected vehicle equipment. There's actually a grant that's coming out that we actually put in for looking at connected vehicle technology. And their goal from that program was to look at the interoperability of 4 different RSUs with 2 different OBUs. And between Eric, myself, the state of Florida, we have surpassed that already prior to the start of the grant. But what you see is some of the connected vehicle devices that we have that are actually at our facility at the RTMC, and that we've been able to do that as part of this project. We were able to really get our arms around this idea of how to share information across different platforms and really to inform a lot of the work from the manufacturers. One of the trends that you'll see here is that RSUs, the roadside equipment side of connected vehicle, as a result of a lot of these efforts, is actually in a pretty good place. What you'll see is, I think Eric talked about, is there has to be a receiving end on that. And what you'll get to eventually is that side is not as well in place. So we'll jump on to the next one, was to go ahead and look at expanding connected vehicle to what was our legacy Bluetooth deployment. We had 213 Bluetooth units that were installed throughout the region through our active arterial management phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 projects. We have been going back and putting up connected vehicle devices instead of Bluetooth devices at those locations to allow us to have really a widespread group of units where we could share information across our major roadways. Those were roadways that were selected by many of the folks that are in this room today. They were our corridors that were originally set up for the I-Florida program. If you've been around long enough to remember what that is, the 14 or 15 major roadways throughout Central Florida. So
With those units, we're about 50% deployed right now. We have another 50 or so that still need to go out. We have them in hand. They are programmed. What we've been struggling with is just having enough contractor labor to go ahead and get that in place. So we went through and have awarded, as of last week, a new contract in order to have access to a third vendor in order to be able to go out there and place things out on our roadside. So we've started giving them tasks this past week, and this is one of them, to go ahead and complete the install of these devices. As I mentioned, the side that has not been as nice is we've been trying to look at them, put it on some of the FDOT fleet, as well as to go ahead and instrument things on local police and fire. The FDOT fleet, the devices we're going to place on them, is actually a new manufacturer of onboard units. We do some pretty robust testing. So far, they have been going back and applying fixes. We've been testing. They've then been applying fixes, and then we've been testing. We're on around 12 of this. So when I talked about in immature marketplaces, what this has to do with, just for those that there's something in order to make sure things are safe. Like if you're sitting out there sharing information about where you are, who you are, it's really important that that be secure. So there is a type of encryption that runs to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that you're not some rogue kind of message that's being sent out there. To do that, there's something called a security credential management system, or SCMS. And the real struggle is that in order to onboard someone into that SCMS, they have to meet a security standard. And that's been a real challenge for the folks that are trying to put things into cars. And that's really most important. We don't want people to pretend to be a car when they're not. So it's really important that we get this right. So we've been taking it very seriously, and been pushing vendors for about the past 2 years to kind of improve their state of performance. So when you hear from the auto manufacturers that things aren't quite as far along, that's a very valid statement. We are finding that out, but the industry is maturing, just albeit a little bit slower than we'd all hope. Then we had a part of the program that's referred to as PedSafe. We're trying to really focus on pedestrian safety. So I'll tell you, this is the first project that we went ahead and went through this effort. Hasm was good enough to put up with us throughout this effort and some of the things that we had done. We put in some passive pedestrian detection. What we learned is that when they have ramps that are shared to go across 2 different approaches, that needs some further refinement. It was placing calls on both legs whenever someone showed up. And if you do traffic signal timing, you know that is called inefficiency at its peak. It goes ahead and maxes out both of your main street and your side street movement. When there may not be that demand, people tend to walk on a little bit more of the off peak. So it tends to actually make things quite inefficient from a traffic signal perspective. So we have looked at some things in order to address that. We also put out the LiDAR, which, if you're not familiar, that's light ranging. So it basically what it's doing is it's shooting a laser out there. It's bouncing off and measuring how far away and what trajectory that object is at. We found out that that's really cost prohibitive. You see some manufacturers that are going down this road. There's some lower cost LiDAR that's out there now. The other part of it is it's become really difficult to maintain. Since then, the industry has gotten a lot better. I know there's some work that, Brian, that you guys have been doing with some LiDAR units. What we've run into problems with is once something is broken, there's not really a troubleshooting side of it that we're used to. And the head units are just a little bit more expensive than what cameras are. It has been pretty effective at being able to convey messages. We've been able to send those out to vehicles. We've been able to catch those with our test units that we know work well from the onboard unit side. And the problem we've had, though, is there's nobody else out there that's catching these messages. So effectively, we're measuring things just like we had hoped. We're sending out messages just like we had hoped, albeit when we have to spend a ton of money to keep fixing it. But what happens is it's not really having the effect on the public that we'd like to have. So what we really focused on was then looking at a second phase and saying, how can we do things better? So in terms of looking at as a second phase, we took some information that we learned through some of the work that Osceola County, Gary, that you guys had gone ahead and done with some of your computer vision work, and looked at applying that within the corridor, actually the same manufacturer, the same vendor for it. And we said, how can we talk more directly to people? So with that, we're trying out having some ways in which we use the audible push buttons in order to send an auditory message out there. Again, so you don't need a connected vehicle device. The signal can talk to you. And then having a small dynamic message sign that is actually being seen by pedestrians as they approach. Again, with this idea of they don't have a connected vehicle device, but we can go ahead and share that information to that pedestrian by going ahead and putting things on the roadside that everyone can see and hear. And the good thing is by using both of those modalities, we're also trying to work with people of all abilities. So if you have limited sight, you can still hear the message. If you also have some hearing impairment, then you can go ahead and see the message. So we're trying to go ahead and communicate with as many different streams as possible in order to help the most people we can. Well, that's great for the pedestrian, but how are we talking to the vehicle? So there was some testing that District 2 had done where they varied light levels from 0 to 100%. And very quickly, neighbors said, oh my gosh, stop flashing the lights all night long. So we went ahead and took a look at some of the lighting standards and have actually incorporated into this a 70% level and 100% level. So we bring up the lighting, but we never fully turn it off. So there's not quite that huge delta that might be waking people up all night long. And we looked at also some amount of shielding so that we could go ahead and minimize the bleed over. So trying to be cognizant of some of the human factors for people who are not driving their car and the impacts that that might have. But this project has really been all about focusing in on talking to people without using connected vehicle, but still incorporating connected vehicle from that first phase. And I'm happy to say that this is fully under construction now. We're expecting it to be complete relatively soon in the next few months to allow us to really go ahead and start getting the benefit that we were hoping to get by talking to people and to cars in a way that can be demonstrated right now while still allowing that runway for the future. Now, part of this, as I mentioned, is building on the work that Osceola County has done about looking at video analytics. It's about us trying to go ahead and be able to measure things like near miss, some erratic driving behavior. But in this corridor, we're really interested in, with it being 441, that section of OBT, is how are we affecting pedestrian crossing? With the different types of ways that we're trying to speak to these pedestrians, are they reacting to it? Are we seeing a change in behavior? And keep in mind, we've got a message that we can change on the auditory side and on the visual side. And what we can do then is to be able to see, is this getting more effective? Is this getting less effective in trying to improve compliance with the phasing that's out there? So we're hoping to really be able to continue to use this as a way to keep tweaking the message a little bit and working in partnership with UCF to do the necessary human factors offline to then be able to show that in a real world environment and then be able to demonstrate those numbers back to the folks at FHWA so that can become a national set of lessons learned. We built on some of the work that was done up in the Pacific Northwest for this effort. But again, this one just isn't quite ready yet. Hopefully in the next few months, we'll be there and be ready. And a major part of this is Eric went ahead and talked to us about, okay, it's great you're doing all this work, but you use lots of acronyms and a lot of big words. And this doesn't make sense to anyone who's actually walking on our roadway. How can we talk to them? And we try to take that message to heart, right? About how can we really get out there and share this with the public? So as part of this, we went through and we built this, a trailer that actually has a portable set of the same setup they would see on the roadside. And with this, the intent behind it is to be able to take it out to public forums, to be able to put this in the hands of kids, to put this in the hands of parents, to be able to take this to middle schools, to elementary schools that are in the area, and to be able to show them, let them go ahead and push the button. We've taken it out to about 5 events so far, and every single time we get the immediate first reaction. Why did you guys put such a big traffic signal head? I said, no, that's the normal size of a traffic signal head. Like, no, it's not. Traffic signals aren't that big. We're like, yeah, they are, guys. Every single time it's the first reaction. We open up a cabinet, people get interested in our domain. They get interested in the work that we do. We've gotten a ton of positive feedback, and it really has helped people to just be able to interact and to kind of demystify and understand what it is that we're trying to do. So it's really, really been great. I will encourage you, if you're interested in going ahead and having us pull a trailer up, drop it off with you, even hang out with it, let us know. Again, we just want to continue to get the message out there about some of the cool stuff that's in our industry. Hopefully that brings some more people in to work with us. If nothing else, hopefully it gets them to understand what's happening out on their road every day. All right, so if we go ahead and continue with the pedestrian safety messages right now, what we are still seeing is that we have been able to get onboard units that do work on the groom shuttles out at UCF. If you're not familiar with that, those are the shuttles that run all around their campus. So those are working and they're working well. They're not only going ahead and being able to share information about the signal, but they are able to actually perform traffic signal priority work on those vehicles. So it is working right around the UCF campus, but again, we're just not seeing that widespread employment across the rest of the domain. When we look at where we do have connected vehicle units that are actively working, this doesn't incorporate all the ones that are the Bluetooth changeout, but you see right now, they're concentrated in a few different areas. One of the key things that we did look at though is when we were putting in transit signal priority and emergency vehicle preemption was that the standard that was out there nationally does not incorporate the concept of conditional. And throughout our region, we talked about that it's important for us to have conditional priority, not just always on priority. So we went through an effort and developed some software in order to allow us to continue to do things the same way that we've been doing them in partnership with Lynx for quite some time now. And so that has been incorporated onto the vehicles. And it is something that kind of is unique to our area. There's some work that Utah has done on this front, but they're controlling it quite differently. And they were relying upon some standards that may or may not be as supported with existing fleets. We tried to look at something that was quite robust and would be utilized no matter what type of standards were used in the construction of the bus. So again, these are working well. We've got this stood up and we're now in the scaling phase of being able to push this out and are actually trying to talk with folks that are on the fire side about an alternative way of approaching their purchase rather than continue to buy Opticom units, about the potential of a different way of executing emergency vehicle preemption. Let's see, when it comes to autonomous vehicles and connected vehicles, these often get confused. Autonomous vehicles are meant to run by themselves. Connected vehicles are meant to share information with the roadside. We're seeing here is that things are becoming more about a connected autonomy, where you have an autonomous vehicle that can talk to the infrastructure. That seems to be the push that we're seeing nationally. So we've gotten some back and forth with folks on how to make that work. Again, the biggest stumbling block is still finding things that go on the vehicle that meet the security standards in order to be able to talk to infrastructure. So some of that is still ongoing, but we are seeing this evolve and have been able to look at some of this within pilots. What we have not been able to do is get a lot of good information from those autonomous vehicles back in a way that we would like. We're really hoping that this matures, but this didn't get quite as far as what we had initially hoped as part of the program. We do have the UCF AV shuttle. We'd actually had some issues with the charging infrastructure back last year. And right now we've gone ahead and gotten that resolved. We're waiting for clearance from UCF and are expecting it this semester in order to get things back up and running. When we have those running again, we'll actually be able to exchange a good bit of information with the vendor of that product. As it stands right now, we actually are taking in some of the positional information from work that the City of Orlando has done, some of the work that Altamont Springs has done, and are using that within our system while we wait for the one that we actually were trying to do with UCF to go ahead and get back up and running again, to be able to exchange similar information. So this one's still a bit of a work in progress. Once we do get that information, one of the things that we have succeeded in is being able to bring it into a central aggregation point that also includes Lynx's information about where their buses are, as well as where Sunrail is, and to be able to connect that information into software that does route optimization. So that work we refer to as the route and mode choice system. That's actually being connected to Florida 511 currently. We have the Florida 511 system in beta. So we actually have where the folks in District 5 have it and the folks in central office have it, but has not been released to the Google Play Store or out to the Apple App Store yet. So we are what we're doing here is still kicking the tires on it. You see the intent here is to go ahead and create connected vehicle messages. So whereas we're saying that the onboard units in vehicles may not be mature, we're seeing that the cellular standard works pretty darn well. The applications you see listed there are some of the alerts that can pass through. So when we're going through and posting a message onto our dynamic message signs that you see on I-4, on whether it be on 417, 429, that's actually generating messages that now can actually be pushed out through a smartphone to individuals, just as if it was a connected vehicle. We're trying to do everything we can to overcome this lack of deployment from the auto manufacturers and get it into people's hands as quickly as possible. We also have partnered with Florida's Turnpike Enterprise. You see the CV SAS. So they have their application. There's the FL501 application, and then there's the data repository the state has stood up in order to connect out to third parties. When we say third parties, think like Ford, Stellantis. You think about the major auto manufacturers. That's the V2X DEP. So within the state of Florida, all these things are sharing messages right now. So when we put something into SunGuide, now it's going to where it can go to all vehicles, even if they're not equipped. They can actually bring it in back through cellular connections. So all of that has been tested in beta. We're about to go to production in it. There's a couple of tweaks we need to make that are really nerdy. And if you want to go into them, I'd be more than happy to go ahead and go through them. But we have run these on our smartphones. And they're working pretty darn well. We've been pretty happy with them. We're hoping to be able to release that within the next 3 months to where you can go ahead and download it onto your smartphone and be able to see messages. And we continue to work with other providers to see if they will support this message type. So we've been reaching out mostly to Waze. They're very responsive about the potential of once we have kicked the tires on our own application and we've taken the lumps and learned what we can and can't do, that we go ahead and share messages with them. They had actually reached out about some of the curb speed warning work that we had done and asked us to provide information. We said, no, we learned that that's not one that you want to do, that's not mature. So we've been trying to, again, take those lessons learned and learn on our application before we push things out to that much broader audience. Let's see here. So these are some of the things that have been integrated. So you look at the ability to provide map messages as well as to go. This means something if you're in the connected vehicle world. For those that don't speak connected vehicle, these are all very specific, like protocols, structured data sets that end up going through. Like I said, good lessons learned here about things that have worked well. This has been a good implement, and we're hoping that this really turns the tide of connected vehicle and gets it out into people's hands very broadly. So with that, some of the key lessons learned is that our ICM program, fantastic. We see an incredible value return. We appreciate the partnership that we see within the area. We continue to get people to come visit to talk about the way to do this and how we get along as a community. When it comes to connected vehicle, things work awesome on the roadside. We're seeing a lot of progress for applications that can handle the slow communication, relatively speaking, of smartphones. When it comes to onboard units, there's still a hill to climb. We're not quite there yet. We go ahead and look at the multimodal communication. We've seen a lot of benefit there and see the ability to connect trips. And that has been working quite well for some time now. The autonomous shuttle, we've seen that the real benefits of this have to be about people of all abilities. When we started putting it on the UCF campus, it runs kind of slow. And for those that get around fairly easily, okay. They choose to pretty much walk. But when we've seen that there have been folks that have cognitive disabilities or ones that have physical disabilities, where going around such a large campus where it's open and requires that kind of walking, that the shuttle really opens up mobility for them. So when we've looked at the autonomous shuttle, we think that it really fills kind of that niche of helping those of all abilities to go ahead and be able to get to their destination. There's been a ton of stuff, and I didn't go into much of it, about data compatibility and data sharing. The key thing to know is the outcomes, right? And we've seen that we can connect things across platforms, such as our cell phones, such as the V2X data exchange, as well as the roadside units. And that this compatibility and sharing by following standards is fully working. We also learned what standards not to use and have started practicing that pretty thoroughly. So with that, open up to any questions. That's right.
All right, questions? Nabil?
Yes. I was gonna ask, but since you asked. Jeremy, thanks for the presentation, the update, much needed. Question is about the SPAT. Do we have a corridor right now for FDOT that's implementing the SPAT at, or is it just a single intersection?
So when we talk about data management and where we stand with it, there's two answers to your question. Right now, every place that has a connected vehicle device is sharing SPAT messages. So within our area, that's around 300 signals currently. But what we're working on is anyone we're connected to. So all of the City of Orlando signals that are connected is to use the native language that those speak. So they speak something called NTCIP about us being able to go through and query every signal in your system and to be able to push that information out and to share the message of SPAT by using that standard and converting it over to the connected vehicle standard, which is something called J2735. So what we're looking at is to make every single signal, not just in District 5, but in the state of Florida, to actually be a connected signal and to be able to share messages even if they don't have a connected vehicle device on it. So that's what we're working on. We feel very confident. We've looked at the data set. We know it can support it. We're already pulling OIDs from your signals in order to be able to do it. And I'm sorry, OIDs are data objects. So that's where we're headed. So right now, 250, 300 are currently working, but the goal is to have 1,600 within the Metro Plan area by the end of this year.
So, and is the idea that FDOT would be transmitting the data out to the signal, or would it be the municipal government that's doing that?
So what we've tried to do with all the data management in the region is to go ahead and aggregate things into the district. The district then sends that up to Tallahassee, who combines all. I say to Tallahassee, they're actually located in the RTMC, but we send it up to central office. That's actually in Sanford, and then it goes from there out to the world. So they push it up technically to Ohio, which is where the other servers are, and then that disseminates to the rest of the world. Yeah.
Thank you.
You have any other?
Chairman? Sure. Jeremy, thank you again for being a great partner. Just have a couple questions here. ATSPM deployment, what's the status on that?
Okay, so you're Antolite, so God bless your manufacturer. They're fun to work with. That ATSPM deployment is fully functional. What's been going on has been in order to make connected vehicle work, the folks at Cubic went ahead and moved from and I apologize, I'm going to say really nerdy things now. They moved over from firmware 76 over to 85.3, and when they went to 85.3, they broke ATSPM. When that happened, we went ahead and got their updated decoder. It didn't work. They gave a new release of an updated decoder. It didn't work. They came up with a new pilot decoder. It didn't work. And then we met with them Wednesday, and they gave us a pilot. It didn't work. And then yesterday, they seemed to fix it. So as of yesterday, it looks like we have a functional Cubic decoder. That will be amazing. Once that happens, then we already have the contract that's out there with the folks at MyoVision in order to be able to provide licensing, updates, access to everybody. Our problem has just been that 3/4 of the signals have been dark because of the firmware issue with the Cubic controllers. But they started decoding literally yesterday.
So you're saying Orange County is fully functional now?
You are fully functional. So you can go ahead and get access to the system. If
Okay.
you want, just reach out to me or reach out to Katie.
Okay.
We'll get you log on to the system. But yeah, yours run perfect.
Okay.
They're not an issue. The Econolites, I think, Gary, you know the story there. We're still trying to run down what's going on with the oversaturation of the NIT card. But the everybody else is running Cubics. I'm sorry. We think we're close. We've been diligently working with the manufacturer to get their decoder to work. I know that was a lot of nerdy language. Sorry about that, guys.
And how about the CV data? Can we get access to that too?
You can. We'll go through and do the request to central office. There's one part of the CV data that we want to make sure that it's very clear. We made a commitment to law enforcement about with OBUs, about how those work. And there's one remaining issue that outside of the security one, they hold the location of where they were turned off last, which effectively then tells you with every law enforcement officer what their home address is. We are telling them that that is not only unacceptable, but that is completely not allowed. That's a public record that we cannot be in possession of. They cannot be in possession of. So there is certain connected vehicle data that we would not make available to HASM, but that's because it's an exempt record by Florida statute. Outside of that, we'll go ahead and be able to provide you access to everything.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any other questions?
Sorry, I'm too detailed, guys.
Mine's easy. So the trailer, I was interested in, have you taken it to like any of, the schools or anything, or is it just public forums? Cause I know like even in Lyman is the engineering magnet. It seems like a good place, a good thing. And
We would love to take it there. We've gone with a lot of like Lorraine's kind of outings for the safety program to be able to show it off there. We've gone ahead and taken it to construction career days and gotten involved with some of the high school students there, but taking it over to engineering magnet school, taking it over to Lyman would be totally cool. Cool. Yeah.
Quick question, Jeremy. What kind of saturation rates are you seeing from your RSUs right now?
So the utilization on them crazy low, right? Back in the day when we put up DSRC units, the other form of connected vehicle before the current form, for those again, don't speak connected vehicle. We had all these units that were out there, right? That were manufactured, had done tooling, but we weren't tied into a security credential management system to throw out like bogus data. Since we tied to the SCMS, it just nosedived. The only things we see out there are ourselves. So if we haven't equipped them, we haven't seen anything. We've seen absolutely no activity that's not us.
Regarding the deployment of TSP and preemption.
Yes, sir.
You've been working with the fleets on that.
Yes, sir.
Is there any update?
So the update on fleets is that we've been going through risk management protocols. We were trying to do that with Seminole County at first because of the extent of deployment that's within the county. And I think we're at the last stages. I think we went through about 4 proofs of concept to ensure that it was not going to adversely harm the fire apparatus, to make sure it was not going to conflict with any of the onboard functions of the vehicle. And so now we're waiting to get back signed approval. Once we have signed approval, then we can go ahead and deploy, because you guys are getting the Denso units that work as opposed to the iSmartways, which don't. So that's what we're just waiting for is final approval. We've gone ahead and routed things for signature, I think through Orange County as well, and have not received back those signatures yet. The only thing else that will hold it up, HASM, is that we are not going to put anything on until the manufacturer fixes the bug where they hold that home address. For fire, it's just going to tell you where they base that apparatus out of, but we still don't want to do that. We think that that's poor practice, and are using basically the financial leverage we've got in order to force them to fix that. So that they're attuned to it. I'll say that. They haven't gotten paid, so that helps.
To kind of switch, I might have heard you wrong, but for the shuttle, did you say that you're having charging issues or you solved the charging issues?
So we've resolved the charging issues, and I can go into the specifics of what it was, but it was very localized to that particular deployment.
It wasn't because of heat in the summer?
No, it wasn't. There were some documentation issues. I can talk to you about it offline.
Okay, well, thank you for that presentation. It's critically important that we have you come in regularly, maybe more regularly, for these items, because you're the future of our transportation network and the efficiencies that we can attain. And as agencies, we've all seen the writing on the wall that we're not going to be able to widen our way out of all our capacity and inefficiency issues. So if there's ways that we can be more help for you and what you're doing in terms of more grants, partnering, that's something that I think we all should be part of. So Obi-Wan, you may be our only hope in the future. So we really want this stuff to work and be more efficient for us. So thank you so much.
Mr. Chair, before you let Jeremy off that easily, I have another question, if I may.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
My Jedi.
I heard you saying CAVs are going to, rather autonomous, are going to be autonomous connected right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I have two parts, really quick questions, and
Mhm.
if you could respond to those. Does your CAV Connect automated program cover any freight platooning right now within the district?
So freight platooning is done usually by a different message set, but the person I have to defer to on that would probably be Eric, because he probably knows more about it than I do. Because Turnpike was the one that went ahead and did the pilots for the state on that front. The only thing I know about is the Carmana program and the use of the different packet type. I'm not familiar with other uses of it through connected vehicle, and technically that's outside of the IEEE standard. It's specific to one federal program. Happens to be run by a local guy, by the way. So there was the new Taylor Locker, and he was doing that work actually, for US DOT. But platooning is a little bit of a separate thing versus the work that I've been doing. I don't know if Eric, I'm putting you too much on the spot, bro.
Yeah, Nabil, good question. For truck platooning, I know we've tested it at SunTrax, and it could be ongoing testing as well. So I can get with you
Okay.
on the side, and if you have any follow-up questions, I can get you, the folks to talk to you about that. And they've tested on the Turnpike, but it's been a few years.
Another pass for you there, Jeremy. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. You like how I deferred that one entirely?
The last thing I have is, how did we go from talk about strictly automation, and we were expecting to go fully automated within 2025, I heard, to a 2030, everybody will be driving with, no driving, rather autonomous. And now all we're talking about is connected. I've heard a lot of feedback. I'd like to get your take on that, if you
Yeah,
would.
so I think like anything else, right? There's a certain amount of where the messaging and the science kind of compete with one another. I will say that autonomous vehicles have been very successful. If you look in the Phoenix area, if you look at that deployment, there was a lot of bad press about what happened with Cruise, specifically in the San Francisco area. The part that they don't tell you there is that the Waymo vehicles are still running, and that those did not really have issues. For those that don't, Waymo is Google, and they're also the one that run the Phoenix deployment. They've actually had a pretty substantially good track record. When you look at others, they haven't had the same number of vehicle miles traveled that you see out of other systems. What connected really does is that connected is a way for them to go ahead and deal with, if I have a sensor failure, I can rely upon a secondary form of information, and redundancy in these things is really key to safety, where you don't want to rely upon a single system that if that system fails, then you can't function. By going ahead and using, if you have blind spot warning that's in your vehicle right now, for example, as an ADAS feature, the idea that you could use connected vehicle technology to do the same thing. If your sensor fails, you have a backup. That's really, really important for autonomy. And that's where you've seen the movement from the national board that's trying to look at this from a safety perspective. That's NHTSA, about them trying to push people in that direction, is really to see connected vehicles to augment their onboard sensors, so that they have a backup in case anything fails on their vehicle. So that's kind of why I think you see the change in message. I think others were just, they didn't have enough miles in, but they were afraid that they were going to be behind the curve from a marketing standpoint, just to be blunt about it.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I have a question. A little different topic, Safe Streets for All. Did we put in an app for the region, and what's the status?
Russ.
Good morning. We're actually planning a more detailed discussion about the Safe Streets and Roads for All open notice of funding opportunity that was just released yesterday, Wednesday, I believe. We'll be having that during our TAC meeting shortly.
Okay. So that announcement that was emailed the other day is about that. The applications weren't due yet. They're due now. Is that?
The NOFO was just released 2 days ago, so that opens the application period for 2024. Applications will be due, I think there's 3 different deadlines depending on which grant an application is being submitted for: planning grant, supplementary planning, or implementation. We're going to have a regional discussion kind of in the at our TAC meeting shortly to talk about what our strategies are and kind of what would be most advantageous for the region.
All right, thank you. Okay, that concludes our presentations. We do have 6 common presentations with the TAC meeting. And for those who are available, we encourage you to stay. That's the MPO planning process for 2024, a Vision Zero update, the 2050 MTP status update, regional transportation for all, TSMO master plan status update, Eric again, and FDOT 3R program. All of these, there's also general information in your tab 4. Upcoming events include the MetroPlan board meeting on March 13th and the TSMO committee meeting on April 26th. Any final comments from any of the members? No? Very good. At this time, go ahead. You got something.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, in the audience, we have a gentleman named Pete Costello. And Pete is a longtime friend, but he's also a prominent member of the TSMO community nationally. And I'd like to just offer him an opportunity to share with the committee some of his thoughts and perspective on where we are with TSMO across the nation, but especially here in the state of Florida, because he's also represents ITS Florida. So Pete, could you?
Thanks, Eric. Boy, how to be put on the spot.
We're still friends though, right?
Pardon?
We're still friends. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a past president of ITS Florida. Still involved in a lot of things nationally. I would commend this group and MetroPlan for the work that you're doing. It's very, there's only a few agencies like that are planning and in operations like this outside of California in a couple areas. So I think the work that you're doing, especially what we've just heard from Jeremy, we're at the bleeding edge here in Orlando. So I can't share any lessons learned because I think there's people coming here to learn lessons from us. So that's my point of view, and I'm just very happy to contribute in a small way to all this. I'm really happy to see what Jeremy said. He mentioned 2 things that have been around for a long time, like iFlorida. I remember the iFlorida project that Ann Brewer spearheaded, may she rest in peace. And certainly the 511 from Florida, the app. I was involved with that nationally. So it's great to see these things still around and moving forward. And the things we've been talking about for 20 years are coming to fruition. And this group is helping to do that. So thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and just wrap up the business for TSMO. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise hand function. You'll be recognized. You can also use the dial *9 on your keypad. We'll unmute your mic and you'll be recognized. Rachel, do we have anyone joining virtually that would like to make a comment?
Mr. Chairman, we have no hands raised on the virtual side.
Okay. Lisa, do we have any comment cards from the public?
We have not received any.
And
No, Mr.
no,
Chairman. We do not.
Very good. And at this time, there's no further business. We stand adjourned. Thank you. Come on, go off.